I pulled into that parking lot thinking it was going to be a quick stop, 15 minutes tops, review some documents, make a couple notes, then head back out. Nothing dramatic, nothing memorable, just another Tuesday in my life. And yeah, that thought alone tells you how wrong I was about to be. The moment I stepped out of my car, I felt it, that shift in the air, like something had already decided I didn't belong there before I even opened my mouth. And if you've lived long enough in my skin, you know exactly what I mean. It was a quiet afternoon. The kind of suburban quiet that's almost staged, trimmed hedges, clean sidewalks, not a piece of trash anywhere. Willow Creek Estates like to present itself as perfect, controlled, predictable. And I guess that's why my presence disrupted the picture. I had driven my Rolls-Royce that day, not to show off, not to make a statement, but because it was the car I owned, and it was the car I happened to be driving after a long meeting downtown. Simple as that. The thing about success is you don't always get to enjoy it quietly. Sometimes it walks into a room before you do. I hadn't made it 10 steps toward the clubhouse when I heard heels behind me fast and sharp. Not the sound of someone asking for help, but the sound of someone about to demand answers. Excuse me. Not friendly, not curious, just sharp. I turned around, and there she was, Carol Whitman, though I didn't know her name yet, holding her phone like it was a badge chin, slightly raised, eyes already scanning me like I was an equation that didn't add up. She introduced herself as the HOA president, said she didn't recognize me, and right there, that was the first red flag, because the way she said it wasn't, "I don't know you," it was, "You shouldn't be here." I told her calmly I was there on business, and I watched her eyes flick from my face to the car behind me, back and forth, like she was trying to reconcile two images that didn't fit in her head. "Business," she repeated, dragging the word out, asking what kind, and I said property-related, which was the truth, just not the whole truth, not yet. She told me any business in the community went through her, said she didn't have any meetings scheduled, and I remember thinking how interesting it is that authority often assumes visibility. Like if you didn't go through them, you must be doing something wrong. I told her I didn't realize I needed permission to sit in an office. And that's when she snapped back that I wasn't a resident, that she knew every resident, every car, every face, and I could hear the pride in that, like she wore control as an identity. Then came the question that always comes sooner or later. The one dressed up as curiosity, but loaded with judgment. What do you do for a living? And when I said I invest, she didn't buy it. Pressed further, eyes narrowing, and finally gestured toward my car and said, "It looked stolen." Not might be, not could be looked stolen. You ever hear something like that and feel it settle in your chest like a weight because you know exactly where it's coming from? Yeah, that happened. I asked her calmly if she was sure she wanted to go down that road, and instead of answering, she raised her phone and started dialing, telling me she was calling the police, saying I was trespassing, that the car might be stolen, and the way she said it loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, like she was performing concern for an audience. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just walked over to a bench, sat down, set my briefcase beside me, because at that point I knew this wasn't about logic anymore. This was about control. People started to gather, a couple of residents, some curious, some uncomfortable, phones already coming out, and Carol stood there with her arms crossed like she was guarding the gates of something sacred. When the patrol car pulled in, it came faster than it needed to, and the officer stepped out calm. Professional, eyes sharp. And when she looked at me, she paused just a second, recognition flashing across her face. She said my name, and I swear you could hear the air leave Carol's lungs. "You know him?" Carol asked, disbelief thick in her voice, and the officer nodded, asked if there was a problem. And before I could speak, Carol jumped in, said I was trespassing, said the car might be stolen, said I claimed to have business there but wasn't a resident. The officer listened, didn't interrupt, then asked me for my ID and registration, which I handed over without hesitation because, here's the thing, when you've done nothing wrong, compliance isn't fear, it's confidence. Everything checked out clean, legal registered, no issues, and when the officer handed my documents back, Carol didn't back down. She doubled down, said that didn't prove I owned property there, like legality itself wasn't enough. The officer asked if Carol had evidence that I didn't, and Carol hesitated. Stumbled, said she was about to ask me to leave, and that's when the officer warned her about filing a false report, her patience clearly wearing thin. That was my moment. I stood up, looked at the small crowd, the phones, the officer, Carol's pale face, and I said my name, Daniel Harris, founder and managing partner of Redwood Crest Capital. And I told them my firm had acquired Willow Creek Estates 6 months earlier, quietly, legally, with paperwork Carol had apparently decided wasn't worth opening. I explained that meant my company owned the clubhouse, the common areas, the land itself, and that the HOA operated under an agreement with us. The silence that followed was heavy, like no one wanted to breathe and break it. Carol said it wasn't possible, said they would have been notified, and I pulled out my phone, showed the emails, the certified letters, the dates, the signatures, and that's when her assistant spoke up quietly at first, then louder, saying she'd given Carol the letters, all of them. The crowd murmured, phones kept recording, and Carol looked like the ground had shifted under her feet. The officer asked if I wanted to press charges, and I shook my head because revenge wasn't the point, accountability was. I asked for the incident to be documented, turned to the crowd, told them I'd be in the clubhouse for the next hour, that anyone with questions about the ownership change was welcome to talk to me. Transparency mattered even when it was uncomfortable. I told Carol I'd need the HOA's financial records, and meeting minutes from the past 6 months suggested she bring them, and then I walked inside. Here's the part people expect to feel triumphant, but honestly it wasn't. I didn't feel powerful, I felt tired. Tired of being questioned, tired of being sized up, tired of knowing that if things had gone slightly differently, if that officer had been less professional, if fear had escalated faster than reason, that phone call could have ended a lot worse, you know what I mean? Later, when I walked back out, the parking lot was quieter, the crowd gone, the energy drained, and I saw Carol standing at the window, smaller somehow. Not because she lost a title, but because her authority had been exposed for what it was, conditional, fragile, built on assumptions instead of facts. I got into my car and drove away, thinking about all the times I'd been stopped, questioned, doubted, and how this time I had proof, I had resources, I had power, but not everyone does. That's the part that sticks with me, the part that keeps me up some nights, because this story isn't really about me winning, it's about how easily someone can weaponize authority against someone they've already decided doesn't belong. Carol thought she was protecting her community, but what she was really protecting was her idea of who deserves to move freely without explanation, and that's a dangerous line to draw. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about it before you answer. Was she doing her job, or was she acting on prejudice? And how many times have you seen something like this happen, maybe smaller, maybe quieter, and said nothing because it was easier that way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you've experienced something similar, or if you've witnessed it from the sidelines, because these conversations matter and they don't end when the camera turns off. And if you've ever been judged before, you were heard, hit subscribe, stick around. Because stories like this, they're not rare, they're just rarely told out loud.